All right. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to start a project called Yggdrasil, which is the tree of knowledge from Nordic mythology. And what I'm going to do is create a sort of student-driven glossary where we're going to ask them about certain topics based off their knowledge of that topic. We're going to put together a study guide or plan, additional links, etc., for the student to investigate later on their own time. So we're going to build this in Vue. Let's see. I'm going to start here with creating a project. Vue create hello world. I'm just going to go Vue create Yggdrasil, which of course, great word to help misspell. Let's see, Vue create Yggdrasil, and I know I'm not sharing the. Unfortunately, I'm not sharing the terminal window, but it's gonna take me through. It's gonna take me through my different settings here. The different kind of add-ons I want. I choose one that is Vue 3, Babel, Router, Vuex, and ESLint. I would only choose the router and Vuex if I was expecting this activity to be more than one page, which I think it will. The way I'm planning this application is that the student is going to initially see a set of questions. So that'll be our, first view. And then on our second view, we're going to give them their study guide, their report, their study plan. You could do this all in one view. You could just keep the state in the view rather than Vuex. But I can see, so I'm going to plan early. I can see where this can go to being, we may want to do more than one view, maybe track some analytics, etc. Maybe deep dive on some other feature. So I'm just going to prepare from the beginning that whatever the feedback is that the students are giving us, we're going to store it in Vuex. We're not going to emit those responses back up to the parent view, but rather just like in Redux, use the commit to talk to the store. So I'm going to go ahead and start the project, get this all initialized, and I'll push it. I'll push this to GitHub. So we had some presets here. You can see this basic default one is just Babel and ESLint. And then you can do custom and go in here to TypeScript and different things like that. So right now it's just setting up the project. I've got an empty project here, and so I'm going to go through. This thing's not going to install anything but Vue 3. Now my boilerplate has that I use for both work and home projects. It has Bootstrap added in there. So that's going to be the first thing I do after I get the project set up and running. I'm going to go ahead and add Bootstrap. And adding Bootstrap to Vue is extremely easy. We're going to add Bootstrap. We're going to add the Bootstrap CSS, the Bootstrap JavaScript, and Bootstrap icons, which I find very convenient to just easily reference them. And then we'll go through Bootstrap. We'll go through a little bit of Bootstrap as we build this, as well as Bootstrap icons. Bootstrap icons they're very professional focused. The theme is sort of like, what's appropriate for professional work. mobile apps, stuff like that. Doesn't have a lot of, I guess, flavor or creativity to them. And so this is where if you didn't find something here, like Font Awesome has thousands more. And then if there was something, if I really wanted to get a nice SVG, I do something like Noun Project. But for most interactivity, next, previous, pause, play, congratulations, correct, incorrect, you're going to find all of that here. And using something like this, so if we just type, for example, type an arrow, it's going to give me, it's going to summarize this to all the arrows. And if I wanted, this is a nice arrow, right, circle, I'm going to click it. And so I'll show you, all I have to do to get this to appear in the code is this nice little I tag. BI for Bootstrap icons, BI arrow right circle. If you're familiar with Font Awesome and stuff like that, Font Awesome does their prefix class as FA. So there's that, or you could use the raw SVG. And I love this little example section here for, hey, this is how it appears in headings, inline text as a link on a button, right? So I think that's really great. Let's see. Okay, our project is set up. Let's see. And I'm going to do npm. I think npm install is already done. That would be your first step after you cloned it down. Npm run serve. I do yarn serve. They're very similar, nearly identical. What we want to do is actually get this hooked up to our repo. So we already have a folder. So git init, then git add readme. Actually, we're going to want to add all this stuff in here, all the starting stuff. But here, just to get this folder, get initialized, I'm just going to copy and paste. And then if I refresh here, I should see just a README. Oh, good. Oh, it actually added everything. Great. There's the public folder, the source folder. Great. Now let's definitely, good. It came with the git ignore. Yep, this is what we want. Great. Let's see if anything got left behind. No. Okay, great. So there's our starting project. Now let's go ahead and yarn serve and get this up and running. And what we're going to do today is, I want to keep the project plan very high level, and really just I want to throw some basic components on the screen to imagine the layout here. I'm a big fan of diving right into Bootstrap rather than start with something like Adobe XD. That's what many other people prefer. That's great. You can get in trouble if you start writing code right away and then realize you need to refactor or throw some stuff away. So it's good to have a plan. I like to do it with a light wireframe in Bootstrap. I find the interactivity, being able to click around and navigate, very helpful for the creative process. And if you just put a little bit of time into it, not too much, then you're not really having to throw away a lot of time. So this is the default view, and that is not at all what that's okay, but that's not what we want. We are going to open this up in, where's our project here? Yggdrasil, so alphabetically down there at the bottom, and let's switch over to code. All right, so I got my project here, the README, package, source folder, public. Great. All right, we're going to start with main. This is where, actually, no, we're going to go up to very thing, right? We're going to start with Bootstrap here. Okay. So this is very simple. If we pop over going to compare it to one of my other projects. About what we bring in via the package manager and what we bring in modifying the HTML of this page. So here we go. So if we go to our package.json, we'll see some very little bit here. And I'm going to throw in a few things that are going to be some quick wins here. The first thing I'm going to do is, in addition to serve, build, lint, we're going to also have a deploy. And what this does is when we do yarn build, it's going to make a dist folder, distribution folder. What we're going to do is we're going to copy the index to be the 404. And that is something we'll get into later. That has to do with GitHub pages. And if you try to do authentication, GitHub pages doesn't like the way the router is. And so it defaults to a 404, and actually, so you get your app to actually run off the GitHub page 404 page. So that one's not too critical here, and we'll talk more about that later. The second thing is we're going to use a package called GitHub Pages that's actually going to handle taking your distribution folder and putting it up on GitHub and publishing it. In dependencies, we're going to use Axios, which is basically like fetch. It's how we're going to do our asynchronous calls to our backend. We're going to grab Bootstrap and Bootstrap icons. We are, just for right now, going to also grab Bootswatch. Bootswatch is like 10 different Bootstrap themes that have been around for a very long time. And so we could very easily switch over to one of these other themes, and it, it'll still look bootstrappy, but it won't look like the generic Bootstrap. And so that's nice. There's actually quite a few of these we could use. That's cool. All right. What else? Core, view, router, Vuex. Great. So that's what we're going to do. In our dev dependencies, we're going to go ahead and grab, I'm just going to put this down here alphabetically, the GitHub pages. Again, I think that's it. We should be at, there we go. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and do an npm install on those. And then once that's done, we will do the initial part where we install Bootstrap. Okay, so everything installed correctly. So if we go to our index here, our index is going to get modified in the following ways. Public index. So what do I like to do? Oh, I forgot about Google Fonts as well. We'll do that. So very simple. I love Vue that Vue can actually just be kind of considered like an add-on to your web page if you want to use Vue that way. But so it's really easy. So I'm just going to add in the font awesome, not font awesome, the Google font for Open Sans here. So that's just going to load the font. We're going to have to add it to the global CSS so it styles everything appropriately. And then for the JavaScript with Popper, JavaScript has two parts. So there's the CSS and the JavaScript. Sorry, not JavaScript, just two parts. Bootstrap has two parts, CSS and JavaScript. You can use Bootstrap. I think you can use like 80%, 85% of Bootstrap without the JavaScript. If you want certain functionality, such as the modals or the accordion effects, that's where you need the JavaScript. So it's not essential for all projects. Though what I love about Bootstrap 5 here is they have removed jQuery. So jQuery is no longer a required dependency. You're just getting a much smaller library, fewer dependencies. I'm going to put this here because I'm not exactly sure how much of the JavaScript I'm to use. Popper is used for doing like tooltips and kind of notification stuff like that. If at the end of the day I wanted to reduce my overall footprint, the size of the app, and I determined that I wasn't really using the Bootstrap JavaScript, I could remove this script. But considering how easy it is to get this functionality and the small footprint that it already has, I think it's fine. And this is how I'm going to use it. So just in the globally on the page, the Bootstrap JavaScript will be available, which I just find convenient. Now we're going to go to, including the CSS though, we're going to do it like this. We're going to go to our main. This in Vue, you kind of really only have to touch this once. And if you've set up a good enough boilerplate, you don't have to touch it project to project once you've set up a nice main. We're going to do a few things. So we got app, router, store. We're also going to import, again, Axios. We want our, these are things that are going to be available in every component in just kind of, the global space. So we want Axios there as well. The ability to make an API call very easily. And instead of this create app, use store, use router, mount app, I'm going to do this instead. Here, I'll put the two side by side so you can see them. We're going to do the top part, but we're not going to mount yet. We're going to create a variable, const app, and then app.config properties.axios. Where I got this from, this is pretty much how all the other walkthroughs on how to install Axios show you how to do this. A lot of what I'm going to say most likely came from ViewMastery, viewmastery.com. So instead of doing this one line where you set up the app and then mount it, we're going to instantiate a variable, set some configuration, and then mount it. Not too complicated. So that's that. And then the last thing, actually, I'm going to paste this all, and this is going to be all our CSS that we want at the global level. So because we did npm install and had Bootstrap included in our package.json, it's going to be here for import. So we're going to grab the latest Bootstrap CSS. That's really the main thing. These other two things are just extra that I like. Bootstrap icons being the other package, and Bootswatch. And here, the Cyborg theme, which I often use just because it's dark. It's easier on the eyes and things like that. For this project, this is more of an academic, kind of officially looking thing. So I may go with a different project. Also, for introducing people to Bootstrap, this one may look a little too unfamiliar. So I don't know. For right now, I'll actually just not import the theme. We'll use vanilla Bootstrap for now. We could talk about some more of the common conventions. And then we are going to have a global CSS style sheet. What I really like about Vue and the single file component pattern we're going to use to build this app is each component has what's called scoped CSS. This is going to be CSS that only runs on that and only styles that one component. So gone are the days where we are writing a giant CSS file or even many little CSS files that then compile to a big CSS file that we have to keep separate from the template, separate from the code. There's going to be only rare occasions that we're going to have a global style sheet like this. And demonstrating here, one is Bootstrap, and the other is, and actually I'll just flip this over so you guys can see this bigger. One is going to be Bootstrap, and one is going to be the style sheet. And really the style sheet here is going to be very, let's do source, new folder, CSS, and it's really just, let's see. I'm just looking up another project to reference so I can bring stuff over from one of my other boilerplates. Here we go. New file, style.css, paste, and I paste. So here, font family Open Sans, font weight 400. This color was when I was using a dark background, and I've created a new style called text small, just so that's available. Oftentimes for footers or for small text, I wanted something that was a little smaller. Something I also find pretty common is they do like they're doing it here in the default project where they center everything. You can, if you wanted to, you could put that in there. But here, let's go ahead and hit save. Let's see, yeah, there it goes. So there are, oops, sorry guys, you didn't see that. Let's go here. So I'm gonna, here, I will, so now this is Open Sans. That's now been applied there. So now we have Bootstrap. We have all this, let's just demonstrate this. If we go into, okay, so main, yeah, I'm just gonna show you main. Main is pretty much our, what are we trying to load into our app and then start the app. If we go into app now, here is this is the page now we're looking at. And there's some stuff here that we're gonna trim away now. But let's go over a little bit of what we're looking at. We have two router links, home and about, which we can see. We have the router view, which is just kind of a placeholder for, it's gonna show whatever view or component is the active view. So that's gonna, commonly what we typically do is something like, where you have like a header, and then you can think of router view as your body, and then you'd have a footer down below. Your header and footer here are gonna stay the same. Maybe you have a nav bar, right? And then what I typically like to do is a container or a container fluid. Do it appear at this level, right? And then the router view. So router view could be, if you're thinking about like an app, this is your, the homepage content, about us, contact us, portfolio, directory, gallery, right? And that's really, we're talking about the body content of each one of those pages. And then kind of the structure around that is these other things. When we build single page applications, when we build either mini games or other sort of interactive charts, a lot of what I do at Oregon State University is build a lot of one page kind of interactive diagrams. We wouldn't use router at all. We would be building everything like right here. We'd use some components, so we're breaking down a page into its pieces, but we wouldn't switch between different views. So for right now, because I'm not actually convinced that this thing is going to, we are going to have different views, but we're not going to have, I think, a navigation. We are going to guide the student or the user from page 1 to page 2 when they've completed everything that we wanted them to do on page 1. So I will do this. I will say this. A header, we're probably not going to have a nav bar. So we're going to have a header, a footer, a container. Now, going over to Bootstrap, a container is, well, a good way to say this, container fluid is a 100% width element. And it's nice for when you want your grid system or your flex system to go the full width of the page. Container does that, but then it has a maximum width of like, I think it's like 1278 pixels or something like that. And so, nice, I'll demo that soon. I think what we want for this particular thing, we'll stay with container. I like container, it centers the content. And if you don't have too much content and you have a container fluid, you're going to spread that out, especially with how browser windows are getting bigger and bigger. It's going to spread that content so far out. It may not be really usable, and you're going to want to then center your content anyways. So router view. So router view, internal to view, it knows what the active route is right now. And it knows that because if you go into router and you go into index here, it's going to have two routes. One with a path of just slash, which is where we are right now at our home page, and the other one being slash about, right? And so that's fine. So it's showing the component of home, which is in our view folder, home. Components and views are actually technically the same exact thing. We just put them in different folders for our own our own way of thinking about the application, right? Views they're really just components, but they're going to be components that contain other components, and we're just calling them views for our own sanity. So what we're looking at right now, welcome to you here. And let me actually hit save on some of this stuff so we see it update. I think I'm finally going to hit save on the app.view, and we're going to see a whole bunch of, now that's going to close everything. Hold on, save. Okay, anything changed? So what are we loading here? So if we go to our homepage, we are loading an image. That's that logo. So if I just delete that, you should see the logo disappear. There it goes. The next thing is this hello world component. And if I go into components, so source components, hello world, I see the of this. Okay, it's going to print out a message in the H1, then it says for our guide, and has a bunch of links. Cool. And then here's that thing we were talking about, the scoped style. So this style for the H3, the unordered list, the list element, all of this stuff is just for this component. You could style another list separately or differently. We are going to definitely just delete this. We don't even want this. So we're going to just delete that. We're going to delete the import. I'm going to delete the component here. And we're just going to confirm for a second that Bootstrap's actually installed by doing div class. Oh my gosh. Div class. btn primary. They should put a nice blue button. Right in the middle there, we should get rid of all that other text. There we go. So Bootstrap's installed successfully. There's our Bootstrap button. And I've erased everything else from home. Okay, great. So going back to the scope of Yggdrasil, what we're wanting to do here is, in our first page, we want to present the student with questions, one at a time. So here, let's write some stuff down in the comments. So on this page, we want to ask the student to begin. So we'll have an initial loading screen. We're going to show them one flashcard at a time. Optionally, initially we're not going to shuffle them, but optionally we could shuffle the flashcards so that the topics didn't appear the same every time. The question here is, the goal is not to confuse or even quiz the student as to what these topics are, but rather, what their knowledge level of each one of these things is. So our actual first Yggdrasil here is actually going to be a Bootstrap one, where I'm going to build this as sort of a survey of the user's knowledge about Bootstrap. And then based off that, it will make recommendations so that the developer, in our use case, I guess our use case here is a developer. So that's the developer. Show them one question. They're going to be about Bootstrap topics. The student will, I guess what we're going to see. We're going to show something like a title, something like a description, maybe an image, right, to demonstrate whatever that thing is. Um, maybe a code sample. Um, and then what we want to do is we want to ask them on some sort of Likert scale, like how well do you know this? And maybe we'll just use a nice button group. So here, so there's two ways we could handle this. We could ask it like a slider, right? Like a 0 to 3, how well do you know this? Or Bootstrap has a nice way of doing a group of buttons called a button group. Content, nope, components, button group. So here, right, instead of left, middle, right, it'd be like, I totally know this, I kind of know this, I don't know this at all. And then we'd use that feedback. We'd have to retain that feedback to the end of the quiz and then programmatically come up with their result. And so button group or Likert scale. Yeah, let's see. For the results of so we're going to do like a 0, no knowledge, 1, some knowledge, 2, all of the knowledge. I don't need any assistance with this. We're going to iterate through all the flashcards, and when they're done, and then so at this point, that's all the purpose of this video is going to be. Everything is going to be stored to Vuex. We're not going to show the responsibility of showing the result is the result view. So we're not going to talk about that now. All we want to do is get the knowledge, get the information from the students at this point. So, okay. So what do we need up here? Kind of like to break this down into a component for probably some messaging around if they haven't started yet. So we have like a introduction component. And once that instruction component is done, once they click begin, then we're going to have, I'm just going to have a div wrap around the container for all the cards. We're going to have a component called topic card. And that's going to be really the guts of the presentation, what I've talked about here. This is going to be topic card. Topic card. And then the result of answering that is going to be stored into Vuex. Down the line here, I could see us loading this from a backend, right? A nice Google spreadsheet or an API. For right now, I'm just going to load it from JSON. So I'm just going to put that up here. So kind of the first step is we're going to load questions from JSON. So that's a topic card. And then we're going to have sort of a conclusion, something, a div that's going to appear to tell the student, hey, you're done. Go on and see your results. So that's going to be our page. And Vue right now is going to be angry at me that I have no rendered element on this page. Okay, well, let's start with the introduction. Now, if you look at the Vue style guide, the convention guide, it suggests something very similar to a singleton model for things that only appear once. So I am only ever going to have one introduction. So I'm actually going to name it the introduction. I want you to use the word the, so the header, the footer, and that helps distinguish it versus a reusable component that could be in a loop, like topic card. Topic card is going to be in a loop for however many components, for how many questions we want to ask. But we do something like the header, the footer. things that appear just once. Not, yeah. So the introduction, and we're going to do, let's see, import the introduction from, and I like that @ sign. The @ sign is a shortcut, an alias for your source folder. So @ sign / components / the introduction, and I just end it there. You can cut view. I kind of like not putting the file extensions. Someone may say that's not very clear, and I may agree with you. Yeah. So the introduction gets used in 3 places. First is in the import, then is in your component list down here, and the next is going to be up in your actual template. So what you see in front of you is actually what's called the single file. I should have mentioned this earlier. The single file component. We're going to have one file for each component. And every component is composed of 3 things: the template up top, then the JavaScript logic, right? And then the last thing is going to be the style with the word scoped. That helps that those CSS rules stay just within this component. So if you had any styling rules, they would be here. Now, views typically don't, so that's why it didn't come here in the starter project. But those are the 3 things. And then we just repeat this pattern ad nauseum, right? For every component, we have our template, we have our logic for that template, and then we have the style. So that's that. Let's see. So the introduction. Now, the error I'm getting is because I don't have the introduction. So let's go to Hello World here. And let's just rename this to the introduction and hit save. And that's actually funny. It's going to grab it and then is it going to render it? Yeah. Yep. Cool. Now, this is not the introduction. We want to get rid of this list. We're going to name the introduction. Props. We're not going to deal with props yet. We'll explain that later. We're not going to deal with any special styling right now. What we want to do is, I want to be, we're going to be like, this is the introduction. And the class, that should appear, let's see. This is the introduction. Now, I'm going to say, I really like, so a very common element is to use card. Card has 3 parts to it. It has a header, a body, and a footer. If you want a very simple card, you can do card and card body in the same element. Hit save, and it's going to give me, you can see it here, a faint little box. And I'm actually going to I'm going to back out here just a second to my app. And in my container, because I don't have a header yet, I'm going to do MT for margin top. M, there's T for top, there's B for bottom, there's S for start, and E for E for end. This has to do with making it more not accessible, inclusive. Rather than it be right and left, we do start and end. So that way, if you were to do a language like Arabic that's right to left, your styling would actually adjust to carry on those rules. So that was a big change from Bootstrap 4 to 5, is we got rid of the concepts of right and left, and everything became start and end. You can also do MX and MY, which is basically start and end at the same time, or top and bottom at the same time. So I'm going to do a margin top, and then there's a scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do 5, and that's going to push that text down a nice chunk there. And so here you see, and actually, I'm going to split the code just for a sec so you can see this. If I go to the introduction, and I'm going to do something like FW-bold. That's font weight bold. I just want this to show up a little bit better. I'm also going to add H1 as a class, not the element, but I'm going to get the styling of H1. So now we're going to get some big text. As soon as this saves, and there you go. Okay. And then the next thing is card body. I'm going to do border, what is it, border 5. I really want you to be able to see the border here. Okay, so you see there's actual gap to the right and to the left. It doesn't go full width. Now, if I had just changed, now I'm over here on my app.view, if I just appended dash fluid to that, it's going to go even farther. There's still a gutter there. There's still like a 15 pixel gutter. But now if I widen this page, the card's going to go the full width as opposed to leaving it at container, and then it's going to be that. If I start going more narrow, then it'll shrink appropriately. But then my content will never be wider than this amount. Now, I want to really get someone's attention with this. Card body isn't really what I want to signal for instruction content. I usually do something like, so there's cards, right? Go back to Bootstrap here for a second. There's cards, and there's a number of different layouts you can do. Stacking vertically. It's got, for images, all sorts of stuff. Another one I like here is alerts. They're these nice little colored boxes. Really great in an application that's trying to give correct messaging to the student, incorrect message, instructions, warnings, etc. For instructions, let's see. Let's do an alert. Here, let's go back over to our app. Alert, and then let's see, alert primary. Let's hit save. Let's see what happens here. So that's a nice blue. I typically, for accessibility purposes, I like text-dark. That's going to change it to a dark gray, nearly black color, rather than it be the default blue. If we go back to the alerts, you can see it does like a blue text, a red text. Those do look nice. They sometimes aren't the most accessible colors. So I wouldn't have to do text dark if I just had a theme that I knew was 100% accessible when it came to colors. So font weight bold, I say this is the introduction, and then that's going to be my component. That's all that is. I'm going to go to, not my app. Oh, here's my app. Let's get rid of this styling. Oh, I see. This is where the text center's coming into place. The nav. We're going to nix that stuff out of there. Okay. If we go back to our home view, we have our introduction. Oh, we forgot the button to begin. So we're going to do a button, class, btn primary, begin. And then we're going to close that out, hit save, and I think I'm going to take that and put it just below there. I'm going to both these things. Let's see, text center. Grab them both. And div. There we go. BTN primary, we have BTN-SM for small and BTN-LG for large. That's another convention you'll see a lot in Bootstrap. SM for small, LG for large. There's an extra small and extra large. There's a medium, etc. Let's also do, was it text capitalize? Is that it? Maybe. But we're also going to do font weight bold. I would like this button to be very readable. There's a, hold on. let's look at utilities for fonts, sizing, spacing, text. Let's look at text for the utility. So Bootstrap accomplishes a lot of styling just through classes. If you find yourself writing CSS, I'm going to say most of the time you're going to be wrong. Like you don't need to do that. So they have classes for left align, right align, large text, small text, all this stuff. Text transforms. Here we go. Text, lowercase, uppercase, capitalize. Oh, capitalize only capitalizes the first letter. What I want is not capitalized, but uppercase. If I go here and look at it, boom, begin. All right. So that's great. All right, so I've got my introduction, I've got my button. Now, clicking this button doesn't do anything in my app yet. So there's my class. Let's go ahead and add an at click equals, let's see, I'm just going to call the function, let's see, do begin. Do begin. We're going to come down here to the JavaScript portion of this. The only thing I have here is name. What I've just described, we'll get into the different parts of a component. There's data, there's props, there's computed, there's methods, there's a bunch of lifestyle hooks. Right now, what's defined here is a method. So methods, colon, bracket, and then we're going to say do begin. This is going to be a function. I'm going to go ahead and console log button clicked. And then what we're going to do is we need to say to the view, right? Because we are in the introduction. That's a component in the view. We need to tell the view that we that something happened. So this so if you're familiar with Vuex or Redux, you're thinking, well, I would just put everything in the global store, and that's not necessary in this case. This piece of information is scoped to this view, and so there's no need to try to just involve the global store just for that. So we're going to do this $emit, and we're going to the function or the basically what we're doing is we're saying we're going to create an event. If you're familiar with listeners and events in JavaScript, this or Unity 2 has a good model for this. We're going to do begin is the name of our event. I like the convention that all these things sort of match, so it's real clear. The function here, the method matches the event that's being set up. We don't actually need a payload for this. You can't emit anything but like true, right? If this was if what we were looking at here wasn't a one button component but a three button component, like a choose your own adventure or a flashcard where you had to select the answer, then there would be three buttons, and instead of do begin, it would be like do answer, and in the parentheses you'd see 1, 2, or 3 or some other value. And then when it came down to this emit, you may want to put whatever the value was that they wanted to send up. In this case, it's very simple. I just want the view to know that this event happened. So it's just this do, this emit. Done. Great. And so you're like, what is here? I'm going to open up the console. There we go. And if I click this, you see button clicked. Button clicked. Great. That doesn't, I mean, it works. Cool. So now what happens? So when we think about making things in components, scoped down to a particular size, right? This component did what it's supposed to do. It renders the button, it handles a button click, and whatever else happens from there is going to be the responsibility of some other component, which we're going to go back up to view. Here we're going to bind. Now the browser has, you notice for a second here that I did the @ sign and click. Click being one of the built-in events that is part of the web browser, part of these elements, these HTML elements. Other ones are like input. Yeah, it'd be interesting to go through all of those things. Those are those built-in events. But if you think about the event kind of listener model, right? I made up an event here, do begin. This was triggered because of a built-in event. So at click on that event, run that function. We're going to do something similar, which is at do begin, right? We could that's the event that is being broadcast up from the component to the parent at do begin. I'm going to, for consistency in my mind, this makes sense. That this parent, this home view, is going to have a do begin method as well. And I like that. Maybe it doesn't scale in all the cases. I like it that it's very clear. I've connected the dots A to B to C to D, and I haven't changed the naming convention or whatever. So methods do begin, and that's going to do something here. I'm going to do a console log, and we're going to say home view sees do begin. So now when I hit save, if I click this button, we should now see 2. Here, and I'll clear that out so we can see that. Button clicked, that's coming from, you see here the introduction.view. Home view sees do begin, and that comes from the home view. Okay, so now I've got this communication from my component up into the parent, the view. Now, what do we want? Well, we want when we've clicked begin, we enter the application. So I'm just going to create a little div class, and this is where we'll do a card body, or to make this really visible, I'll do alert, danger, and we'll do a nice H1, and then we'll do at content, and hit save. Now that's going to appear immediately. There we go. Now, we don't want the introduction and the app content to show at the same time. It should be one or the other. So what we need is some sort of state variable. So name components, I'm going to say we're going to do data. And data is written a little bit odd, but it's data, and then the function, parentheses, and then you return an object full of key value pairs. So in this case, we're going to do right. We're going to have 3 states. We're going to basically say, did we begin and did we finish? So do like is started, and by default false. Okay. Great. And we're going to do v show exclamation point is started. So we should only show the introduction when it started is false, and then v show is started. So this way, there you go. The div that had the app content is no longer there. Now, vshow versus, there's another thing called vif. Vshow is, if I was to inspect this page, this div is still actually rendered. It's still part of the DOM. If I did vif, it wouldn't be rendered. And we'll talk about when to use vif versus vshow. There's some performance things and some timing things, but vshow is essentially just adding a display none, right? So how do we flip is started to true? And that's where do begin comes in. So this dot is started equals true. There we go. So if I hit this button, begin, The component sends a message to the parent. The parent assigns is started to true. Our template updates so that the introduction becomes hidden, and the second app content red box becomes visible. There we go. We've changed the application state, which we are, or at least the view state, which what we could call it, right? I guess there's like a component state, a view state, and then some global state that we'll keep track of in Vuex. So there we go. Now we want a topic card. All right, so we'll leave this in place. We won't make it red and everything like that, but we will say that will be the wrapper for the content. And instead, now we're going to do a topic card. And let me think. We're going to say, I'm going to do one more thing. And I guess I could combine it with the one up above, but I personally like more verbose coding because I feel like it's more human readable, and at the end of the day, having someone be able to help on a project because and have them understand it is better than trying to be clever and fit everything on one line. So the performance of having 2 lines versus 1 is negligible. Having another dev come on and be able to look at the code and understand it is priceless. So a div class, okay, it's not going to be a class here. We need a v4, which is a for loop in Vue. And I'm going to write this before I've written the source for this, but topic in topics, and then it needs a key, which is, I guess we'll call it topic.id. Again, I'm sort of I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. So for every topic in topics, whatever this array is, it's going to create a topic card. So let's actually not create too many errors at once, but let's at least render topic.label. And let's put a nice big H1. So when we get this working, it'll be really visible. Let's see, it's going to save. There we go. And it's going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about when it comes to topics. Okay, so we're going to import. So let's see, right? We're going to, very first thing here, we're going to load the question. Import topics, JSON from @ not components but data, go to topics. And really this is a JSON file, and if you wanted the convention of adding the file .json, then by all means go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create a data folder. I'm going to create a new file, topics.json. I'm going to go into this file and I'm going to do a square bracket, because what we're going to do, a square bracket, because this is going to be an array. Curly bracket, what do? We do ID, we know that one, and that's going to be, let's see, topic 1. And we also do a label. That's my convention for, don't use title or name. I see these things used a lot. What is a title? Is it the header? Is it the whatever? I like label. Label for its purpose. This is just the. I guess this came up a lot of times when we were doing interactive maps with like countries. So the country name. I'm trying to think of like the. Now I'm blanking, but they would put dashes instead of spaces, right? So we have something that works at the code level, but isn't friendly for printing out to the screen for someone to read. So that's why I like label. That's at least my intention of what this field is going to be used for. So topic 1, so like a perfect example here, the ID is topic 1 without a space, the label is with a space. Yeah, and we'll get into what more is going to be part of this later. Let's at least get let's get both these things rendering now. In our home, we're importing the topics.json. Now, while that is loaded in the script, it is unknown to our template yet. In our data, this is where we're going to create topics. And if I wanted it as a blank array, that's how I would do it. And at least if I saved this right now, I would suck in the error. Let's see. Yeah, there's nothing to print out. But if I sign, oh yeah, sorry, yes, right. Topics JSON is defined but never used. Right. So now if I sign topics JSON to be topics, that should topic 1, topic 2. Another thing that I always do when I first import JSON like this is I always just curly bracket. Let's see, what did I set it to? Topic. So I just grab that variable here and I just print it out. And this is it's going to just print out a nasty little blurb of just the JavaScript object right there, the JSON. But that's a nice way to at least confirm, yes, it's loaded. There it is. What are my keys? What are my values? If you're familiar with the pre-tag, the pre-formatted, it's just PRE. And now you get a nice little human readable, something that actually respects the kind of the tabs and spaces. Lay this thing out in a more readable format as it updates. Let's see, save. There you go. So 1 key value pair per line, 1 curly bracket, 1 square bracket per line. There you go. So that is easier to read. Okay, so we want to show 1 topic at a time. So this is fine, v4. So it's going to create a topic card, and then basically just like before, we can do. Let me think. We can do this in 2 ways. Now that I'm thinking about this, we can, using v4, render all of the cards and just determine which one of the 10, for example, should be visible at a time to the user, right? Because again, we only want to show them 1 flashcard at a time. So there's a way in a v4 I could do all the topic cards and then just make one of them active. So that would work. It means I'm making a bunch of DOM elements though, right? I'm loading the HTML, perhaps the images, the definitions, and rendering all that to the page, doing that for all 10 and doing it right at the beginning. Alternatively, we can just do something like this where we do topic card and as a prop for card data or something like that, where we would just load in whatever the active card you're on. I think that'll be easier. I'm not the v4. The v4 is fine. I'm glad I introduced that, but that I don't think it's going to be what is going to be the route I want to go down. What I want is something like this: current card, or not card, sorry, current topic. Okay, and once again, I've introduced something current topic. What is current topic? That you haven't talked about that. Okay, we know that topics is an array. Right now, it's an array of 2. So, let's see. Current topic index starts at 0. Okay, that's going to be the index. We're going to keep track of where we are, which of the 2 is our current topic, and then we're going to do computed. So I'm going to assume that you guys have at least done like an introduction into Vue. So a method is a function that's going to run code every time it's called. A computed is a cached value. It can be a method. It can't set anything outside of itself, but a good example I always give is think like a timestamp, a Unix timestamp, right? It's just one long number. If you print that to your screen for like today's date, your users are not going to know the date. They're going to see a big long number. So, but that's how you're storing it in your JSON or your database or wherever. So computed, you could say, hey, the current time is, and you always return something from this. Again, we're trying to create a value, right? So current time would be, I don't know, whatever. Time format, blah, 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 this is some pseudocode, right? And then whatever the time is, right? So somewhere in this function, it's going to take the timestamp and return a string that is the year dash the month dash the day. And so if I was refer to current time in my code, I wouldn't see the Unix timestamp. I would see the cached value here. And I say cached because if for whatever reason the code within the variables called within this computed change, then the function here would rerun and recache. So for those, a good example would be like an RPG, a role-playing game, something where your characters gained experience, and every 100 experience you gained a level. Okay, the variable that you're tracking is experience. Your computed variable is your experience divided by 100, right? And you print out to the screen your level. So as the character gets more experience, eventually you're going to hit that cap, and then you'll be the next level, but you're not storing level anywhere. So this is kind of data right here, somewhere right here. You would say, hey, what's your experience, right? And the computed would be, this dot experience divided by 100, right? And then you would do whatever your current level is. So in this particular case, we have topics and we have current topic index. I could actually do it like this. Topics, current topic index. You could do this. This would actually get you the current topic, right? If this is 0, then this is going to get you the first element of that array. It's true. I like to do it current topic. I like to do it as a computed, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But it's going to return. Return. Let's just do that. And you have to do this dot. This dot. You don't have to do this dot up in the temp up here. Current topic. Okay. So this is going to pass as a prop to topic card, which we haven't written yet, but current topic is going to be our data payload. And we can go ahead and print that out here just so you can see. Here, I'll go ahead and comment that topic card for a second. Well, I'll explain why I prefer the computed value. Here, let's see. There it goes. So there's our array of both topics, and then the current topic, right, is just the first one of the array. Okay, so this is why anytime you load JSON, or at least for the vast majority of the stuff I do, there's always a reason to filter out certain things. So I may load a JSON of every country in the world, and then I would want to filter it to just South America. Or load a whole bunch of news articles and then filter out just the ones about the military. Or something like that. And so you want an opportunity to do that. Or commonly, I'm loading a whole bunch of entries for something, and I want to filter out all the ones that don't contain complete data. Maybe it's missing an image the student was supposed to upload or something like that. So let filtered topic equal, and this is where I would do this topics, and I would filter off whatever the topics are. So this is, I mean, this is a nonsense filter. I'm pretty much saying, hey, give me all the topics where they have an ID, which is all of them. But yeah, and then it's just going to return the current topic array of that. So the idea being here, for some reason, I mean, in this particular case, there's really, I'm not going to need to filter anything out, but this is a nice pattern I use, because very oftentimes I don't want to curate JSON. I want to just grab a JSON data set that's out there, like a list of countries, because it's a lot easier for me to slap on a couple of filters and reduce down that data set than for me to write the data set from scratch every time. Okay, so there we go. And so that's the same thing. So that's our computed value. And so just to walk you through what's going to happen here. On the topic card, right, they're going to see the data. They're going to be presented with 3 buttons. They're going to click one. And then something we need to call out here, topic card, while their answer may go up to the view X, the global store, right? Because we want to use their response and to what question on the next page as we create the syllabus or the study guide for the student. We want to increment the question that we're on. So we're going to emit an event up from the card to the parent, right, to the view, the home view, and that is simply going to increment current topic index. So that's how current topic index is going to change. And when current topic index changes, you see that? It's part of our current topic. So it's going to rerun this computed value just automatically. That's part of view. That's really freaking helpful. Okay. So it's going to increment that. And then we're going to have some, we'll get down here a little bit later, but you see this, yeah, when we get to conclusion, I'll show you another computed value that we'll use. Okay, so we have our introduction. We've done that. We actually have a div that contains all the cards. Well, we're actually not going to do that. We're going to actually only render one card. We're going to just change the data we have is in an array. We're just going to change the data that we're presenting in the card. And then there's going to be a conclusion. Okay, so let's write topic card. So, let's go. We have component. We have the introduction. And we're going to use that. I'll use that as a nice, simple template. Save as the introduction. Topic card. Okay. So here on line 17, it says the name, the introduction. It doesn't throw an error if you don't change this. It just is not as helpful, especially with the debugging tools for Vue. It'll say, it'll say the introduction, and you're like, hey, but I thought that was my topic card. It's because you didn't update the name here. Topic card. Okay, and then we don't have a do begin, but we will do something similar. So I'm going to leave do begin there for a second. All right. Do begin, and just so I don't have to click this introduction every time here, I'm going to go back to my home view for a second and hit is started to true. And that started us off now. just start us off on our first question every time. I want the introduction because our users should have an initial welcome. So let's render topic card. And like I said, components appear at least 3 times. Once in our template, once imported, topic card, and once down here in our component list. Okay, so topic card, and so let's see. Oh, and what does topic card currently have? It has the button. So let's do this. This is the topic card. And instead of primary, we'll go ahead and use info just so we can see that a bit different. This is the topic card begin. Okay, great. Good. And let's see. So what did we say in the scope? We're going to have a title, a description, image, a code sample. Great. So I'm going to do this functional. It's not going to be very pretty, but let's just get all our requirements right here on the page. Div class. We'll do like an H3 so we don't have a nice big thing. And then we'll get our title, or not title, sorry, gosh. I went through that whole explanation. This is our label. Then we're going to do div class. Let's see. I'll just leave that blank for right now. This is where we're going to put our description. We're going to have a pre-tag where we'll show code. I'm not going to do an image right now. That's a little tricky to load the image, but we will revisit that later. We'll say, let's see, what else did we want? Description, code sample, title. Okay. So one of the interesting things, right, I'm thinking of the value of this tool. If I was going to ask you 30 questions about Bootstrap, it'd be interesting to take a look at the data about what you identified as areas of knowledge versus areas you were strong in, areas you were weak in, and wouldn't it be interesting if I saw some sort of trend? The way this is initially scoped out is this is going to give you recommendations based off each individual question, but what if for a second I started to see that if I gave like a category or even a couple of different tags to each question, and now I realize, okay, what you're really struggling with are CSS conventions or media conventions, stuff with, if I say, like video or imagery, right? Or something like the grid versus the flex, flexbox, stuff like that. And then there'd be a maybe Bootstrap's not the best example of that, but that is an interesting thing that we could derive from this sort of survey to a student or to a developer, right? Where is there a pattern to what you consider weak versus what you're pretty good at? Because that right there would be, while Bootstrap may not have an exact resource to help you with that, we could suggest a third-party site, some other YouTube video, etc., on some more general principles if you happen to have a weak point. Okay, so I'm going to display here. I'm just to so here. I'm going to get that out. I'm going to just drop this bottom part down just a little bit so that it appears just a wee bit lower. A little bit of lag. There you go. Okay, so this is the topic card. Now we're going to talk about props. Okay, I showed you guys data here. All right, here's some data. You can populate it, so I can populate this data, and then the template runs off that data. With things like is started, oh, let's get rid of experience. Things like is started and current topic index, those are things I can change, right? That's the state of this view. Props are similar to data. I can have them rendered in the template. I can have their values be included in computed methods, computed functions as well as methods. What I can't do is change them. It's like a read only. Okay? So in this case, I'm passing card data into the topic card for the sake of just rendering it. Okay? So topic card, and I'm going to have, so name, so kind of you would do, name, components, data, props, computed, method. That's sort of the, as you kind of this JavaScript object you're creating for consistency. So props, and I'm going to look at something I was working on yesterday. So just as an example here, I'll just show you an example. Label is something I'm trying to load. Label, and then with props, you want to define the type, so it's a string. And so if I go back to, oops, I forgot a comma there. If I go back to home here for a second, instead of passing in card data, let's just back this up a sec. Oh, just do label and do current topic dot label, right? That should do it. Let's see, because current, what did I forgot? Let's see, a comma somewhere on topic card, props. Let's see, what's it saying? Unexpected token, it's got a comma somewhere. Save. What did I just need to save? Yep, okay. There you go. So it's rendering topic 1, right? That's it, right there. Label, it's rendering it. Great. Okay. So doing this colon label creates the property that, and then I'm populating it. This is creating a binding. So you can also do this. I can do label, and this is just a string, and this is my string. Save, and then we look over at the page. It's going to update to just be, this is my string. Okay? But we don't want it to be a string. We want it to be a value of something that is actually part of the JavaScript. So for that, we need to bind it. We need to put that colon there. We're going to do this a lot of other times. You can do, like, you can assign classes to divs, obviously. You can also bind classes. So a button, or say, the div background could change based off of whether we're started or not, right? Or some other property. Oh, so now it's yelling at me because now it's like, hey, this is expecting now a variable, and this is not correct. Current topic label. Okay, so current topic label. So what we do is we create not what is the other here? Let's split screens again, so we have topic card open. Okay, we have label. Here, let me go to just code for a second. Okay, we had label, we had description. Let's save and let it drop down a little bit. There it goes. Description, and then code. This is, of course, assuming that I've actually done description and code for each one of these. And I'll show you how to check and how to handle for when that's not the case. So code and description are both strings. Everything's a string. Let's see. So now what I like about this is you see if I open up my data here, topics, I haven't defined description or code for this. So the value of here is undefined. So when I reach this topic card to print it out, it doesn't throw an error. It's just rendering a blank string. Now what I don't like is that pre-tag is still there. If this div was a paragraph tag, it too would be there, right? And that's gonna make some weird layout stuff. So what we want to do in this case is something like we could do this. We could do v if or v show. V show description, so that if it's not defined, if it's an undefined, well, that's falsy, right? That's going to come up as false, and so then it won't be rendered. Let's do the same thing here. There you go. So it's only rendering things that are there. Now, if I go into topics and I write code, and I save that. Now, since updates, now that code is defined, it renders within the pre-tag. So this is just some light conditional logic, some v show there. The other thing you can do is this description. So instead of a string, you could define you can define an object here as the definition. A type is still going to be string. But the default is going to be this is not defined, right? Hit save on that. And now description will have, if you don't pass it in, it will render. It has a default value, right? So a good example of this is creating introduction components, which is basically just like an alert, maybe with two parts, a header and a body. And in some cases, you may want that header to say something other than introduction. So you let it be a prop. So you could pass in a string. In most cases, the title introduction is just fine. And so you let the default title, introduction, be set there, or instructions be set there. So it allows you the flexibility to overwrite that value, but you don't necessarily need to. So I'm going to set the string, code. And then what we have is, so this is good. Personally, this starts to get pretty verbose to me. On some of the projects we have, when you create like a timeline card, you have a start date, and that could be year, month, day, end date, title, description, URL, linked media, and then all of a sudden, this part, you're having to define every single key in your payload at this, and it gets pretty unwieldy. One way to get around this is actually v-bind. This is a trick I learned just within the last couple days, actually. V-bind current topic. Now, this doesn't change anything I guess to back it up here a second, I wanted a simpler implementation of how to pass multiple key value pairs, multiple properties here, into the object. And so I was thinking for a second, do I just do something like this? Payload equals current topic. So that and just send that, and that made this very simple. What it did over here, though, is that the only prop you would then have to define would be payload. And unfortunately, that's passing in an object that there's no definition of what's inside that payload. You would have to have the built-in knowledge, or sorry, the knowledge of the application to know, well, the payload passed into a topic card is going to have these 3 or 4 properties. And so that wasn't great. I didn't like what I was just showing you. I didn't like how there were so many props you had to define every single one, because some of these components could have like 10 different props, and so I'm like, so I have to write 10 different lines? No. So what I like here is going back to like model view controller, object-oriented programming. If you think of topic card as a class, here you still have the granular definitions. I'm going to have a label, I'm going to have a description, I'm going to have a code. And you could think of this there on the parent side. Instead of this colon and having to define each of them, you do a v bind. And it just takes the object. And let me show you, let me switch back to app and code. And let's render all this stuff. This is going to pass the whole object, and it's going to map to the appropriate keys, right? So here I'm not having to call out specifically that I'm mapping to prop label equals current topic label. I'm just passing current topic in, and it's going to match up to any of the props. And that's incredibly useful, because now in my parent view, I can keep it nice and simple, and then still have all the detail that I want down in the class, down in the topic card. So good. So yeah, so I mean, if we take away all this debugging code, you can see like my actual view, the main guts of the app at this point is very simple. I have an introduction, then I have this, and to be fair, like you could even do this, right? You could just do the topic card, get rid of this. I mean, that's not too confusing, right? I'm only going to show topic card when I'm actually started, right? And the last thing is going to be some sort of conclusion for when it's got like a V show for basically an is done, and that'll be a computer view that we come up with later, which is basically, am I started, and am I out of questions? Have I gone through have I gone through all the topics? So that's our code, that's our description. Code, task. Okay. So now what do we want to do? Let's throw in a couple more. Let's throw in a couple more of these. And I think we just need to rig up our buttons to pass our responses. Let's see, oops, I forgot something, comma. There you go. Okay. You can do something like, and this is, okay, so this is where computers are also pretty fun as well. So over here in our home view, we have topics, and I could do this. Not current topic, but total topics. And that could return, I know this is pretty shorthand, but this topic dot length, right? And I could do I could do this. So current topic, total topics. I could say current current topic. Let me see. What I'm wanting to do is do like you're on 1 out of 4. So current topic is so current topic index. Current topic is the topic itself. So current topic, I don't know, for right now, we'll do current topic count. And then total topics. And so this would be essentially just +1. So when you're on the 0th element, your question 1 out of how many elements. So you could do something like this, right? See, this right here is where it's nice to have kind of a div, not just do it on top card. So you could contain more than just the one. But you could do something like, okay, so if that's topic card, do a current topic count of total, or let's see, what is it, total, whatever, total topics, right? So if I hit save, 1 of 4. And so this is pretty cool too. You could have one more computed that was, give me like a % complete, because Bootstrap has a pretty cool progress bar that takes a width in a %. So I could do return. What's it going to be? So 100 divided by this total topics times print topic count. I think I'm skipping something there. I'm a little tired, but we'll see. Return blah blah, and then let me grab this press bar component. Let's see. Here we go. Where's the progress bar? There we go. So this is just, so I would normally do this. Hey, Furball. Hey. I would normally do this in a separate component, but I'm not showing the app right now. Let's get rid of the VF. So class progress, height of 1 pixel. So I'm going to create a nice little 1 pixel progress bar. Width is get %. So what did I write down there? % complete. So we're going to use that. Payload color. So we're going to do we'll just do primary. So here's an example. So just briefly, example class progress bar versus bound class of progress bar. I wanted to use a JavaScript variable here when deciding, is this going to be a blue one, a green one, red one, etc. So you end up doing a bind, so you can do include a variable here. You also see a bound style, so with the colon in front, because here with, I want to use a JavaScript variable to define that part of this. So the truth is, for this BG, we'll just do BG primary. We'll get rid of this bound class. We don't need it here. I'm going to hit save, and we should see, I forgot, let's see, I did something down here. I have an extra comma. We should see, oops, let's see what happened. I have an extra total topics. Did I mess up something? Let's see. 1 of 4. Okay, so this is setting us at Oh, so I did this wrong a little bit. If we're on question 1 of 4, it's not current topic that I want. It's the index. We're at 0 of 4. Okay? So I have my bar here, and let's make that. That's barely visible. So height, let's make that 10 pixels. And okay, so now we have a gray bar, and if current topic index 2, then we'd be halfway through our quiz, and that bar would be 50%. We'd be on question 3 of 4. So again, here's like the only thing that I'm actually tracking as like a variable itself is the number of topics I have and the current one the index of the current one that I'm looking at. All these other ones are computed. How many total I have, the count of the one I'm currently looking at, the percent complete, all of these are computed variables. So they're cached values. This totally solves the problem that you would typically find in programming, where you basically get dirty data, right? Outdated data. If I increment from question 2 to 3, I now have to figure out a way to also update my percent complete, right? And so you end up having all these relationships where like one thing has to change the other thing, change the other thing. So with Vue, it's like, hey, percent complete is simply a cached calculation of your total questions and where you currently are at. And Vue itself will take care of watching that for you. So that's pretty cool. And there we are. We put in a progress bar in there, and all the components for that, completely unplanned, was out of scope for what we were talking about, but added that in there in like whatever, 3 or 4 minutes. Pretty gosh darn simple. Oh, and when we set this to be current topic 2, you can see up here, topic 3, right? We automatically it automatically updated that, which was just a really cool demonstration of all of this. What we want now is we are in our topic card, and it just has the one button, the do begin. Let's do this. Asking the student to give us an answer. Actually, asking them to give us one of. So, how well do they know the topic? I do not know this. How do we phrase this? How do we phrase this? How much do you know about? And then we'll put that in a nice bold. How much do you know about? And we'll hit save, and that'll be topic 3, right? And then nothing will be question 1. Nothing. Some. Everything. Right? Pretty simple. Get rid of the periods here. So, and then what we're going to send up as the actual answers, 0, 1, 2. These buttons right next to each other, we can have them appear nicely as, going back to our Bootstrap here for a second. The button group. Sorry. Components, button group. We just have buttons, and then you throw one div around them with the class of button group. We hit save, and now I hit save. This is going to look a little bit different. So we got rid of the rounding in between the buttons. Now they're all kind of together. That's pretty cool. Let's see what other kind of styling we can do. Left, middle, right, left. We can do colors. Oh, I like this. I like that outline, so you can very clearly see. Oh, this does it as radios, right? Check boxes, so these can be toggled on and off. I like that functionality too. If you had some settings, I like the radio here. You can only select one, right? And that would be useful if we were keeping this persistent on the screen. The truth is, the moment the student clicks the button, we're going to go on to the next question. So we can treat these as just like regular buttons. We don't have to implement the radio buttons. There's vertical ones as well. I like that. I like that outline. So button outline dash primary. We're just going to copy that and paste it. Hit save. And oops, go back to our app for a sec. Oh, there we go. Boom, boom, boom. Great. Okay, so now let's do. So we call this one do answer instead of do begin. We're gonna emit do begin. Now this time we do have a value, right? We are wanting to send said. Now, there's two ways we can. So right now I'm going to do this as if we don't have ViewX. I'm going to keep track of all the students' answers in the parent state. I could send it to ViewX right here, or I could even send it in the do answer function in the parent that we're about to write as well. Either way, kind of like not doing it here. This card is just gonna, again, the responsibility of this card is to render a button. When you click it, it's going to emit an event with the value, and then that's it. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll handle it up here in the home. So this is our here. We're actually progress bar. We'll write a progress bar component at some point, and just pass in all this stuff. Keep this one up here nice and clean. Okay, so just like we have the at do begin, we have the at do answer, and we do do answer. Now this could be called whatever I want, but for consistency, I like to name the function with the event. It's kind of self-documenting. Now we have this value over here. When it comes to this, again, because events themselves are built into the browser, right? And so they send a payload. Anytime you click on anything, anytime you do any one of these things, there's a whole bunch of stuff that gets sent about what it is you clicked on, right? So it's not just that this event is being emitted with just this value. It's got a whole bunch of other stuff. The way they handle that is this $ event. It's just this generic wrapper. You know, if you're familiar with like try catch with those exceptions objects, there's probably a better way to explain this. But in this right here, we don't just put value, because if you try to take a look at the scope of what this line is, value has no context in the home.view. So built into view, right, we just do this $ event. Don't worry about it. It makes sense in the next part when we actually go down here to write the do answer. We don't have to do the $ event. We can just refer to a value we're getting. Here we're declaring it, and then we just say console log value. So without doing anything else, this should send up the value. It should come over to home, and we should see value 0, value 1, value 2. So again, here we are. We've connected component to parent and sent data along with it. Okay, but we wanted to do something. We actually wanted to do two things. Do answer should store the response, and it should increment to the next question. So that one's pretty easy. Print topic current topic index plus equals 1, right? Now, as you know, if you have some background programming knowledge with arrays, you realize at some point I'm going to make that index go larger than the actual array, and we're going to get an error. So there's a couple things we could do. We could either have a computed is done, where we basically say current topic, let's see, return current topic index equals total topics, right? So we put this and this and this. Now you could also have is done. You could also have is done as a variable, just like is started, and flip is done to true. You could do that. I kind of like keeping the amount of actual data low and putting more things in computed. So let's see, and then basically, without writing the whole conclusion, without writing the whole conclusion component, you can just see div v show is done. Okay. Now, is done by default should be false, so we don't see it. Now, if I click this, oh, look at that nice animation there. That's the built-in transition to the Bootstrap. Again, +1 for Bootstrap. It's got a built-in transition there for the progress bar. So anytime you redefine the width, it has a nice animation. This is 4 of 4, so I messed up something. Let me think. Oh, yeah, I think I messed up how I was phrasing this. Hold on. The percent complete is this total topics. This is 0. Let me think. So a 0% is that you're on question 1 of 4. A 100% is that you are a question that you've completed question 404. 404. So it's going to go, the number of steps is 0, 25, 50, 75, 0, 25, 50, 75. Yeah. Yeah. And then the moment you hit next, it would go to 100% and be done. So if I do that, yep, done. And you would have, see, I like this. It didn't error out. It returned basically filter topic of 5, which doesn't exist. So it just kind of errored out nicely and passed undefined into that thing. And it just rendered that. So we want a is done. So this should show when is started and is not is done. So we have is not started, is started but not done, and then is done. So now it just says done. Yeah. So if we were to refresh, and just to demonstrate this, let's do our starting is started as false. We have a fully functioning demo here of all 3 states. And let's set our current topic to 0. And we refresh. This is the introduction, right? We hit begin. Okay, how much do you know about topic 1? Nothing. How much do you know about topic 2? Some. How much do you know about topic 3? Everything. How much do you know about? Done. So functionally, we worked through all 4 of our states. Yeah, there's probably a better way to handle that progress bar. but so functionally it's working. I think I'm getting something. I don't think I'm getting something off. You would want the bar to fill the last bit and say complete. So but you wouldn't want wouldn't want to show 5 of 4. That's an error there. That's what you wouldn't want. But I feel like for the user you would want to see that bar complete. Yeah. So that's something that could be addressed. Now, I mean, so what are we missing from the scope? We load the questions from the JSON. That's there. Right? Delete. Ask the developer to begin. Done. Show them one flashcard at a time. Done. Bootstrap. Okay, so we're doing the title, description, image, and code. I'm not doing image yet. I'll do that later. Buttons. Right? No knowledge, some knowledge, all the knowledge. Great. We have 3 buttons. They emit different values. We emit the card from the card to the home view, and we increment the topic. Right? Done. This last part, we're not actually storing our responses. So that's what we could do here. At least right now, responses. And I would do something like this dot responses dot push value. That's very simple. You would want, I don't know, something a little bit better, where you had like more like a key value pair that actually identified what the question was and what the associated answer was, etc. You could do that with the IDs. For right now, I'm just going to build an array of this stuff because I'm going to wrap up here in the next minutes. But in this last 2 hours here, perfect. We've done start to finish this Vue application, built all the components that we've needed to pull off this very simple survey. So do answer, right? We're going to store the response, great. Later down the line, we'll store it in Vuex, a better data store. For right now, I'm just going to store it in the view state, which is what we would do in more of a single page application, right? Increment to the next question, we're doing that. Great. So here, let's see. Let's just see this. Now, for this responses, let's go ahead and do this. Let's do a nice and visible. We'll do an alert dash success, nice little green box, and we'll just render out responses. And what I really like how easy this is in Vue. I can grab any of the computed or data values and just print them to the screen. And I think that's really, really helpful. Look at that, just for debugging purposes. There it is, that green box. So I'm going to begin. How much do you know about topic 1? Nothing. So 0, 1, 2, 2. Great. Boom. I've recorded my data. So we've covered starting up the application, installing Bootstrap, talked to some of the basics about the store, the router, when we're going to use it, whenever. We cleared out the starting information, and we started populating our home view here with our initial components. Talked a little bit about that, the logic of, and this is something we see a lot in very simple activities, right? Like an introduction screen. Rather than do like a whole view for that, we can just do a little box that we just toggle off when they're ready to begin. We have our topic card. We have even this little extra progress kind of is done. Now this would eventually become our conclusion page that just said more of a thank you, had a button that then brought you over to our next route, which is going to be our conclusion. Now you could build all of this just here. I could just throw in a couple more components on this particular page for showing the results. In order to demonstrate how the router works, I'm going to use a second page for that. And then let's see, down here, so we did that. We talked about loading stuff from JSON. loading 2 different components, the data of the view, the computeds of the view, the methods of the view, handling emitted events. So I think, start to finish, we have a nice framework of an application in just under 2 hours to build with. So yeah, thanks. And I'm going to leave the project here for now. All right.